Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Fresh Brewed Kentucky Politics. Hopefully the audio is a lot better this time than it was yesterday, or is on the mobile phone. That was some bad audio. Hopefully the audio is much better today. So let's start off by once again reminding everybody, share, follow us, share the page, share us out to all your friends, family, neighbors. Follow us on the Spotify. This is a podcast that gets put out on the Spotify. That's great. Check that out. Listen to it. If you want to support us and support our fights, and we'll be talking about some of our lawsuit we've got going that we're a part of too. But if you want to support, when we say our fight, we do active fighting. What do I mean by that? We do things like, impeaching the governor, suing the governor, attacking the governor, right? We do more active fighting than what you typically see out of your activists. We don't just knock doors. We don't just try to get people elected. We actively fight. So if you want to support that, go to donate.brewedco.com. That is donate.brewedco.com. So I've got a couple things to cover for you guys today. Couple stories for you. What do we got here? We've got school choice. Interesting movement happened on school choice. Of interest, not surprise, but of interest. Talking about that. We're going to talk about just some disappointment we've got with some of the things we're seeing out of the legislature. No big deal. Talk about House Bill 312, which is flying through the legislature. I believe it's in the Senate right now. And what it does for open records requests. Talk about House Joint Resolution 77, which was heard by the House Committee today on state government. I watched that. I'm going to give you the rundown on what's going on there. We also have, of course, tell you guys about our suit, about our recent court filings, and talk a little bit about Chuck Schumer, talking about immigration and a little bit about Brazil, actually, funny enough. So dig right into it. Let's talk first about school choice. We had HB 563 come to a vote today with House Floor Amendment 2. So what is HB 563? Well, HB 563 was a education savings account. Basically, it was a tax savings account to kind of make it easy to explain. Basically, it was where a parent could put money into this account, kind of like a health savings account, except it wouldn't be pre-tax. But you would put money into this account, and you could spend it only on certain things, education things like tuition and school supplies, tutoring, whatever for your kids and education. And so this education savings account was tax deductible. So if I put in, let's say $5,000, I would get $5,000 tax credit or whatever it worked out to be. I'd get a tax credit on my taxes. And the idea being is that you could basically get a deduction for the money you spend on your children. Now, House Floor Amendment 2, what that would do would be to allow these accounts. See, these accounts were only supposed to be used originally for public school situations. So for those who are unaware, I have a son in public school. I was unaware of this, that you can put your kid, if public school is offering open enrollment, and you don't go into that district, what you can do is take your kid and send them to school at a different public school, and you have to pay to do that, though. There's like a tuition cost to pay because though they get, I guess the thing being they get the SEEK fund, but they don't get your property funds, but then your other school gets the property fund. I don't know. But anyway, so you can pay money to go to a different public school. So this health savings account, this school savings account, education savings account was originally wrote to be a tax deduction for those people doing that. Now, what Floor Amendment 2 would do, and that was put forward by Matt Lockett, actually, he represents part of Jessamine County, part of Fayette County. I believe he's about 75% Jessamine, 25% Fayette County, over on the Jessamine County side of Fayette. So, what he proposed would be that we could use this tax incentive, this education savings account, to fund private schools. So basically, if you are an adult who has a child, of course, and you're paying for private school for your kid to go to maybe a school like LCA here in Lexington, Christian Academy, something like that, you could put the tuition money into this account, then pay your tuition out of the account, and then you get a tax deduction for paying the tuition. Now, the arguments would be, well, isn't that just a tax deduction for the rich? To which the response would be, I hear where you're coming from, but at the same time, let's still remember that is one student that the public schools still get money for, because they're still getting money from your property tax. They still get money from the general fund, but that is money that the school doesn't have to spend. So if anything, moving as kids go to private schools right now, what that does is sorry about that. Anyways, what that does is kids go to private schools, is that puts more money in that public school they would have normally went to. So what this would do is essentially give them a way to get some sort of tax break for the fact that they're not spending tax dollars that would normally be allocated for their child to use for their education. Instead, they're able to use it for the private education. And that was in House Floor Amendment 2. That wasn't even fully school choice. That wasn't even saying that the dollars follow the kid that you normally see with school choice. And so for people who don't know, school choice is this idea that you can use tax dollars to pay for private schools. Now, the schools actually work better, and it's actually cheaper. So from a fiscally conservative standpoint, take for example, go back to LCA. It does a better job than public schools, you would argue, though, but it's got private, whatever. It doesn't matter. Here's what's important. It only costs them right around $11,500 per student for tuition at LCA. That same kid going to Fayette County schools, Fayette County schools spent $17,000 on that same student, $16,000 on that same student this year for public schools. Now, a big part of the reason why is because LCA and these other private schools, they don't have the bloat. They don't have that government bloat, that government overhead. The principal of the school, the CEO of the school, the director of the school, whatever you want to call it, it doubles, right? You don't have hundreds of employees that then report to a central office. So, for example, to teach 44,000 students, they have 6,000 teachers to teach 44,000 or 6,000 staff. That doesn't even include the private staff that you see in public schools, like the cafeteria workers a lot of times work for a private company. Sometimes janitorial people work for a different company. But those are the bus drivers, everything else. You don't have to provide those services necessarily, and that makes it cheaper. And so, obviously, reason why you see a lot of times with these, what they're called charter schools, which are public, private schools that get public funds, what you see a lot of times with them doing better as a school is because they're not hampered by the same things public schools are hampered by. Once again, you got that government bloat that rises up costs of education that doesn't need to be there when the government touches anything. But also as well, you can fire teachers, and that does create some better situations, because at the end of the day, sometimes there's a such thing as bad teachers, and sometimes, just like any other profession, they need to be fired, and you don't typically see that. So you get that out of charter schools, but also charter schools, because they're not hampered by the unions, can also pay better teachers, good teachers who are good teachers, more money, and so they don't have the overhead, they don't have the bloat, they got more buy-in. It's just the reason why they work is I just went through a litany of reasons why they work, and there's a debate there about school choice, and I don't feel like having it. But there are people, and big surprise, the people that don't want you to have choice, freedom of choice, a lot of those people sat on the impeachment committee, as we saw. Regina Huff voted no on this. Ed Massey, big surprise, that terrible person, voted no on this. Kim King voted no on this. And all this would do would be to allow a parent, if they're paying for their kids' private schooling, to get a tax income break, basically to get a little bit of the taxes refunded that the schools now get to keep that they normally would be paying out on the student. And they are so beholden to the teachers' unions. They're so worried about the teachers' unions and everything else that they wouldn't even allow you to spend your own money on your own kids how you wanted to and get a little bit of a tax break for it, because, that would just be wrong. And I don't see, looking at House Floor Amendment 2 and the education savings account, I don't see how you don't vote for that. I just don't see. If you want to sit there and say you're a conservative and you're not willing to give a little bit of a refund to a parent that isn't even using the public schools that funds are being allocated for their kid to, right? They just sent their kid to public schools. Once again, that money would be out. If you're not for that, you're not fiscally conservative. That's a basic idea. They're paying for a service themselves that normally the taxpayer would have to pay for. Give them a little bit of a break. I don't know. I digress on that, but I think school choice, there's a greater debate there. But to be so afraid of school choice, you're not even willing to let people get a little bit of a tax break for the money they spend on their own kids' education. It's quite frankly ridiculous. Now, last I checked, there's still some health stuff going around as far as that goes. I am trying to figure out what's all going on with the floor. We've been trying to I'm checking my phone right now to see if it's going forward. I'm not seeing anybody willing to do it. We're trying to get HB360 sent to the floor, but, of course, the legislator's not going to actually do something to make, they're not going to actually do anything to make that possible, of course, on HB360. That's probably not going to make it to a floor vote, which means it probably won't pass because, of course, it won't be veto-proof. But they can still pass SB8, which is no mandatory vaccines. I actually dropped a T-shirt about that. Once again, while the current COVID vaccine, because it's not FDA approved, cannot be mandated, but once it does reach FDA approval, there are definitely some of those safeguards that come off on vaccine mandates. And listen, you shouldn't force anybody to put anything into their body that they don't want in their body, that they didn't agree to. For you people who want to try to relate that to abortion, you agreed to that child being in your body when you agreed to get with that individual that put that child in your body. So anyways, let's see, House Bill 312 flying through. That's an open records request that deals with open records request, for those who don't know, is where you can ask your government for all records pertaining to a certain subject and they give it to you. It started out really, really bad. It started out really bad and really hampering. In fact, opens records request that even we've used and pooled while we're in suits here that we fight in wouldn't be allowed, and that's an important process we need as we are fighting and pushing back on the government. Well, they took out some of that stuff, but they left in this really weird thing where essentially the legislative branch would be exempt from any open records requests. Essentially be able to request from the open records for open records. If then the legislators say, no, we don't want to give it to you, you can ask for a review of that, but the people who review it are the legislators. So it ends up being a sort of a kangaroo court where the person who you're trying to get the information from is the one that ends up getting to decide whether or not you get the information. Kind of messed up, but apparently that's real important. They can't pass HB 360, which would protect businesses' licenses from the governor being torn apart, but they can bother to find time to protect themselves from open records requests. That shows you where their priorities are. We've got House Joint Resolution 77. That had a hearing today inside the State Government Committee in the House. And basically what this started off as a shell bill. And as I said, I knew it would be used to bargain, but apparently the governor didn't play along. But basically it would but it would put a rubber stamp of approval on the governor's executive orders, his mandates. And House Joint Resolution 77, when this was first filed, just put a rubber stamp on all of them. They came in with their committee sub last night and subbed in and put in the list of the executive orders they'd continue. Now, their defense for doing this at the time where they did it is, hey, there's some executive orders that are good, some that maybe need to continue. Some examples that they gave is, in this bill that they put in there, is like being able to have an expired license because the licensing office has been closed to in-person, which, one would say just open up. Like, is it weird to anybody else that government offices get to be the last thing to return? Like, everybody else is returned. There's tons of employers that are back in the office and they're working, but yet government offices can't seem to find the time to return. But anyway, and there's some good ones in there. There's some that, are kind of, I personally have some issues with. One was about price gouging, which is weird. It kind of plays with the market. And also, too, I think, in an emergency, in a resources or tight situation, I feel like anti-price gouging laws and rules can sometimes do more harm than good. The point of them is to make sure that people don't get, end up paying a lot of money for the necessities they have just because there's an emergency situation. I understand that. I get that. I agree with that. However, at the same time, you are playing with the market, and what is the right price to not have people per se not being able to afford normal items they would be, but more so to control on a person's overbuying, right? So for an example, if with price gouging protections, a person can go on down to the store and buy maybe toilet paper every other day, and the basic rules saying, hey, one set of toilet paper per person doesn't work anymore because I come in every day and I get a set and I end up hoarding it because I think I need to, because we are naturally selfish people. We see that, of course, with the mask mandates and everything else. These are selfish people that want to be able to leave their house, so you have to do something for them. But anyways, and so people are selfish, and so they buy up a bunch of toilet paper. But yet if we had taken off price gouging rules and allowed the price to get a little bit higher, that maybe would have calmed people down to ensure the individuals that aren't out there being selfish, that buy toilet paper just when they need it, would make sure they had toilet paper and would maybe slow down some of those behaviors. But that's just price gouging is in there. And there's some other things in there. Nothing that is world ending. I personally would prefer you to not to put anything in place at all as far as a House Joint Resolution goes. I personally prefer that just because I would rather none of this goes on. I would rather we say after a year that there's not a whole lot of emergencies. However, I understand declaring a state of emergency gives you access to certain resources, like federal resources, like we're seeing with flooding, and I understand that. But at the same time, one would say at this point it's been a year. Figure it out on your own. But whatever. And I'm not trying to. That's a whole nother debate. But watching this is so telling. And if you've never watched a committee hearing, I encourage you to do so. There's a whole lot of brown nosing that goes on. There's a whole lot of butt kissing that goes on. Surprise, surprise, Nemus is on the committee. Old chair of the failed impeachment committee, Nemus, sitting there kissing butt, laughing up with some people while also sitting there making sure he plants a big wet one right on there on the cheek for him. And it's kind of gross to watch. But one of the things he said was he came into this session. This is Nemus. He came into this session worried that the government by the legislators would overreact, that they would go too far, and how he's so proud of how measured they have been. Nemus, you haven't accomplished anything. You can say the courts are hamstring, they're tying us up and yada, 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 and I hear you. But at the end of the day, we didn't elect you to try, we elected you to do. You had opportunities to solve this. You had impeachment in front of you. You failed. You have the ability to pass HB 360. You failed. You have the ability to do a lot more. You failed. And instead you're sitting there patting yourself on the back for how measured of a response you guys have had. It's quite frankly, it's kind of ridiculous to watch it happen. But of course, that's what they sit there doing, saying, hey, we've been real measured in our response. And it's just kind of gross to watch. And so they sat there kissing their butts, patting each other on the back, saying, wow, what a great job everybody's doing. And then admitted that the entire bill that was a shelf bill, a holding bill, was literally to go ahead and negotiate with the governor. And that's what I knew it would be for. If you guys remember several weeks ago when I first brought this up, I said this will be a resolution, and resolution's different than a bill. It's more temporary. Anyways, this resolution here would be used to negotiate away our freedoms, and they tried to, but the governor didn't respond to it, or he responded with taking away, I don't know. He just didn't respond the right way. That's all they said. But it's just proof positive, exactly what I was saying. It was nothing more than a tactic to negotiate away our freedoms. And, of course, that's what it was used for. I'm not saying it's the end-all, be-all, not terrible things. There's several things in there I don't like. Personally, like I said, I don't like doing anything to say we are currently in emergency. But, Nemus himself in the meeting said he believes we're currently in an emergency. And I just, quite frankly, disagree. I just don't know of an emergency that lasts a year and gets down to this point. But, if for governmental reasons they need to declare an emergency so they can get access to funding, or as Nima said, if we need to put National Guard at vaccination sites, which is a scary thought to say the least, that we would need to put National Guard involved with vaccination. But of course, that was one of the first scenarios Jason Nemes came up with, because he's a totalitarian and believes government is a problem solver, not just a necessary evil. So, there you go, House Joint Resolution 77. Additionally, as well, if you guys have been paying attention to our Facebooks and social media at all, you will notice that we are involved with Beans and filing and getting involved in a suit against the governor. I've been talking about this for weeks and weeks and weeks about how HB1, SB1, and SB2, which the Judge Shepard in Frankfurt enjoined from incurring, basically stopped that bill from becoming law, he thinks. And there's a legal strategy out there that says he can't do that because we are not a named party. Brood's not a named party. Brood can follow HB1, and so can Beans, because we're not named parties, and the governor is the one who enforces it, not the legislator. So by putting a restraining order on the legislator, you're not doing anything when it comes to us. So we got involved with Beans, and we have filed a We've got involved with them. I'm sorry, and we filed and joining onto and becoming a intervening party onto the a Speedway case from Northern Kentucky. And the reason why this maybe has a little more legs than you're going to see at the Goodwood lawsuit. The concern with the Goodwood lawsuit is it's filed there in Clark County. That judge is a little bit of a squish. Judges don't typically like to rock the boat too much, and so the governor has asked that the case be moved over to Franklin Court in front of Judge Shepard, which once again, of course, it will be put on hold by the very partisan hack Judge Shepard. But however, if we do something up in Northern Kentucky in front of the Judge Bergman there, Bergerman there, who has been known to whack the governor a few times, and getting on that case, we've got a little more standing. It's already in that district court, so it gets held there. And I think that is a better way to go about it. And of course, opening up as many fronts for him to fight on as possible is a fantastic move, I think, as well. And I got to thank, Chris Weiss for being the attorney on that one. He's a very great legal mind. And anybody who thinks that when it comes to governmental law, civil law, dealing with the government and the law surrounding that thinks it's black and white is quite frankly, you're a legal neophyte. That is not what it is. We wouldn't need to, quote unquote, judge shop, if you want to call it that. If it wouldn't matter which judge it was in front of. And what I mean by judge shopping, so if you look at, for an example, there's a bill in I don't know if it passed or not, in the legislators that was to be able to move cases out of Franklin County Court. And so what they mean by that is they're judges, you can judge shop. So sometimes you want to bring a case in a certain county because this county of judges sucks. And we've seen that time and time again. And so to sit there and say that law is blind or whatever, it's just not true, especially when you're dealing with this type of civil law. It's a lot about opinions, and you recognize that when it comes to your Supreme Court. That's why it's elected. That's why the Supreme Court positions at the federal level are an appointed position, but involved, and people care so much about who it is and the short list and everything else, because it is so much about judges' opinions at the end of the day. And we pay more attention to the judges you elect, because they can definitely be an enforcer or a great enemy to liberty. So that's our suit going on Tuesday morning next week is the hearing to see if we can get onto the case. It might come to a point where me and Richard over there from Beans end up giving maybe some live testimony. So we'll see how that goes. April 17th next month, we'll be having our Liberty Luncheon. This will be for anybody interested in learning what we're doing over the next year. We're going to be doing these every month, and they are going to be meetings to talk about how we're going to go about attacking this establishment, this anti-liberty, these rhinos, these people who don't care, don't represent their people, how we're going to get them out, who are our biggest targets, coordinating, processing, finding candidates. That will be what these Liberty Luncheons are all about. I encourage you to come to the first one, April 17th. You'll be seeing it, of course, on our Facebook and Eventbrite and Twitter and all that, but we'd love to have you guys out there. Once again, this Saturday, 7:30 a.m., we're meeting in Eastern Kentucky. We're meeting at Brood to go to Eastern Kentucky. Constitutional Kentucky has several pallets of water and other supplies they need brought down there. We're going to be bringing those down there for them since we'll be headed down there, and we'll be pulling them on the trailer there, but also we'll be going down there to help dig out and help with flood relief and put labor on the ground. If you want to join us for that, that's this Saturday, 7:30 a.m. Now national news. I just real blurb. I was reading last night about Brazil. Brazil's getting hit with this P1 COVID variant, and it's a variant that is of course more infectious, but also somehow, some way, it is 6 times more likely to reinfect and possibly even affect people who've had the vaccine. So once again, that is just your daily dose of fear, I guess, for you. But one of the most interesting things about the article is the amount of flack the Brazilian president is getting for refusing to close and lock down. In fact, the Brazilian president is saying, hey, here's the deal. Those people who are at risk, you're at risk, stay home. We can't afford to close our economy. We literally can't afford to do it. We got to stay open. All those people who are worried about it, he actually said this, are wussies and need to... Which is, hey, there you go, buddy. They're wussies, and they need to get out. They need to work. Wear your mask, social distance, wash your hands, but get out, work, go about your lives. Those over 55, stay home, be careful, watch yourself. And, of course, people are left to their own decisions, and they just can't have that. So, of course, it's all doom and gloom. In the article I was reading, all doom and gloom, talking about how the ICU, some of them are over 80% full. And, I don't know about you guys, but hospitals don't make money off empty beds. It is important for them. They don't typically run a lot of extra beds. But, they're really doing they're really spinning this up, getting real excited about it. Brazil's just like, listen, guys, we're going to do what we're going to do. And, I appreciate that. And he's under fire a little bit for that. And, I don't know enough about Brazilian politics, know if he's a good guy or a bad guy. So I'm not going to say, I super support the guy. But I understand the idea. And it's real easy to sit there and say, hey, you just need to close up and save lives. But he's making that hard decision to say, hey, listen, we can't afford to. Those at risk need to stay home. I can't come out with a blanket mandate. If you're at risk, stay home. It is on you. And I can definitely appreciate that. It's weird to see Brazil maybe having a little more freedoms than America, where we have supposedly this fantastic constitution we don't seem to be super forcing. But, hey, we're going to make some changes here, right, guys? That's what that April 17th Liberty Luncheon's about. Now, also as well, we've got Chuck Schumer on The View making some statements. Old Chuck Schumer, that wrinkly, white-haired guy, telling us his world's life wisdom, and he was asked why he isn't giving Biden the same amount of flack he was giving Trump on immigration. And what he said was, Biden inherited a huge mess on immigration, and it's not going to be cleaned up in a month. I guess it depends on what you define a huge mess on immigration of. And what I mean by that is let me tell you here. Fiscal year 2014, there's 479,371 southern border migration. Fiscal year 2015, there's 331,333. Fiscal year 2016, right? And so, Trump's coming into office, right? 408,870. Fiscal year 2017, 303,916. Fiscal year 2018, 396,579. Now, in fiscal year 2019, that's where we're dealing a lot with an immigration crisis. Remember, he said it's a state of emergency. They all said it's not a state of emergency. Doubled our southern border migrations that year. 851,508, doubled the prior year, but then going into fiscal year 2020, back down 400,651. You're entitled to your own opinions, but you're not entitled to your own facts. Quite frankly, Biden is not walking into any more of an immigration mess than Trump walked into. And that statement shows an extreme amount of partisanship. And I would almost respect him better if he just came out and said, listen, he's my guy. He's my guy. Biden's my guy. I'm a partisan hack. I don't call them as I sees them. I'm not going to come down on Biden for immigration because it doesn't serve me. It's come down on Trump because it serves me. It fundraises. It helps my side out. It's not my guy. I attack him. But I'm going to protect my guy. Even if he doesn't know where he is, I'll let him know where he is. And I'll protect my guy, and I'll say, man, he's walking into a mess. And what's the mess he's walking into? Well, the mess he isn't walking into isn't border crossings. Quite clearly, historically speaking, he's walking into the same situation Trump walked into. That's a fact. So what's he really walking into is he's walking into a situation where of the policies were to not encourage immigration, was to try to not encourage immigration by letting people know that they could just go ahead and they can just walk in to the country and just walk in and be released to the interior and everything else. And instead, they got to do something different. But what they don't want to tell you is immigration, as far as how Trump's been handling it, has pretty much been the same since the Flores settlement. And unless they're going to just literally release them into society, which they have done that to a degree, they have to do the same thing Trump was doing. And they catch themselves in a stickier situation because they've been attacking him so much on it. And so that's why you're seeing this weird double standard on immigration as far as it goes. Not weird, it's expected. And quite frankly, you know, personally, my personal views on immigration for anybody who cares, if you care what I think, I want it to be extremely easy to come into this country. What do I mean? I want it to be extremely easy and quick. You come in, background check, we give you a tax paying number so that way you can come in, work, get a job, pay your taxes. And also that way too, you're playing by the same rules all of us are playing. You're just competing on the labor market. But yet we're getting taxes. You're not judged on society. I think a good policy, I think Mexico has a policy that says, and I think Canada does too, that says if you are in your first 10 years of living in a country, if you're an immigrant and you need any governmental assistance at all, you're deported. I think something like that too as well. Basically, I don't care if you come into America. I just care if you come into America and you're going to add to the problem rather than help the problem. If you're coming in to help the problem, to contribute, to be an amazing American individual, open arms. I want to make it easy for you to get in. I want to make it easy for you to contribute to society. I want to make it very easy for you to become an American and enjoy in the American dream. However, I don't want you to come in and not pay taxes, and I don't want you to come in and pull down our own society. We're not even paving our roads. Listen, Kentucky's got to up its gas tax to pay the roads, right? We can't even take care of our infrastructure. We don't need to be bringing in more of a problem. So if you're not going to be a problem, what I mean by that is, and once again, to quote James Madison, I struggle to find the line of the Constitution that allows you to spend your constituents' money for benevolent reasons, for charitable reasons. There isn't one. The government doesn't get to decide to spend our money on charitable reasons. And so if you want to come in, you want to work, you want to pay your taxes, everything else, more power to you, let's welcome them in. The labor market will naturally work out, how many people should come in because they're coming in because they have jobs. And if they don't have jobs, they don't have jobs. Like I said, it's a bigger discussion. If you care about my views on immigration, there you go. But I definitely don't think, though. I think the laws are the laws, and they need to be enforced. They need to be followed. And if we want to change our immigration process, that needs to be done legally, not through administratively, through the executive branch, however. And so when he says that, hey, he's walking into a bigger mess, it's just not factually true. That is some partisan, once again, some partisan hackery we're seeing there for sure. And I definitely think we need to be holding them to the standard. We need to calls them out when we see them doing these kinds of things, when we see them holding a double standard, obviously. Chuck Schumer, I'm to tell you, Biden's walking into the same exact immigration system every single president basically does. The difference is that he's doing the same things every president does. The difference is that you attack the last guy for doing those things because, I don't know, you just didn't think it through, right? Because, of course, there isn't a solution where he doesn't do those things. So, there you go. That's today's show. Once again, guys, come on out, support us. Come out to the coffee shop, get a cup of coffee. Go online, broodco.com. If you want to support our court battles, once again, get the impeachment cost. We also have this new filing we did today to get rid of the mandates, the mask mandates included in that. Getting rid of the mask mandate for you guys. Those are all court filings we actively filed today. You can go ahead and donate to donate.broodco.com, BREWEDCO.com. You can also buy from shop.broodco.com or just broodco.com. Come on by, Brood. Check us out, and we'd love to see you. Thank you guys so much. Don't forget to share, and check us out on Spotify, YouTube, everything else. Thanks.